it's basically shitty diets, shitty habits, like those are going to lead to gut issues. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Basics Podcast. I'm Matt Stone, and as always, I have my best friend, Dylan Waldhuter. Dylan, it's good to see you. I'm glad that we're able to record this evening. I thought your house was flooding for a second there. Are you
It
okay?
was. I'm okay. The sump pump didn't kick in, and all it fucking does in Wisconsin this spring is rain. And it finally made its way into my basement. But I think the issue's resolved. I can hear the pump running. So we'll chat for 45 minutes to an hour, and I'll go down there, and hopefully my couch isn't floating in a big pool of water.
It's going to be fine. I think there's only one proper place that we can start this episode. Did you see that your boy, the Chipotle CEO, had to come out and make a statement about the heinous portion sizes that have been going on over there?
I didn't. What did he have to say?
He said that they have not adjusted their portion sizes, that they are just fine. But the best part about the video, he said, if you go in there and you don't like that the portions that you've been given, sometimes you just got to give the guy behind the counter a little look. And he did
He
that.
said
He did
that?
the little eyebrow. He said you got to give him a little look. And then normally they know what that means. So uh I am not a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, but I feel like inviting your customers to gently harass your employees is probably not the best way to go about things. But now you know. Go in there, give them the secret little look, little eyebrow raise, and you're going to get hooked up.
Oh,
Um,
man.
so, or you avoid this problem altogether by going to the far superior Qdoba. But that is neither here nor there. What our real hot topic for the day, Dylan, introduce it.
Yeah, it's an NPR article, a recent NPR article. And the title of it was Step Aside BMI, Body Composition Tests Are on the Rise. And it's a really interesting article, actually. Highly recommend giving it a read. It talks about body mass index, which is a metric that's regularly used for determining whether a person is normal weight, well, underweight, normal weight, overweight, or obese. And it's calculated as a ratio of your height to your weight. And so as a result of that, we're using pretty minimal data points to draw some pretty bold conclusions. And in the macro, it's a useful metric for understanding how overweightness can impact health. It helps us to look at trends at the larger scale. But I think some of the flaws with it are that a lot of times in the micro, from a person to person point of view, or even yourself over time, it's not super helpful. As an example, Matt, if I were to ask you, do you feel that I am an overweight person? What would your response be to that?
You're not. Absolutely not.
If you plug my data of height and weight into the BMI calculator, I have a BMI of 25.1, which puts me just into the overweight category. A
Dylan,
guy who
I'm
grew up with
obese.
skinny guy syndrome.
Yeah,
Oh, and you're
I am
obese.
I'm obese. I'm 30. I'm 30.0 on the BMI scale. By that metric, yeah, I'm obese.
And
And
you're a brick shit house.
thank you. I'm assuming that you meant that as a compliment.
Yeah, I did.
But yeah, a it's a trash metric. It's not to say that there's no point in having it. It's just another set of data points, but I really don't like how I don't like how it says average weight, overweight, obese, with the only things that it knows about a person being their height and weight, because it doesn't take into account what percentage of that weight is muscle, what percentage of that is fat, what percentage of it is bone, water, etc. And we both know that we've all seen it. The fitness influencer holding up, their fake pound of muscle versus their fake pound of fat, and how that looks. A pound of muscle is significantly denser than a pound of fat, and how that looks on your body, one, is wildly different, but how it affects your body is wildly different. You can use that muscle, and of course fat has its benefits, and we need some fat on our bodies. But if you're looking at a person that is 220 pounds at 20% body fat versus somebody at 30% body fat, they're going to look way different, and their health is going to be way different.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's useful to know if a person is overweight or obese, but it's more useful to know if that overweightness or obesity is the result of body fat or some of these other factors that you're mentioning. And so that's what body composition scanning, which is what the article goes on to talk about, gives you the ability to do. It's going to measure your body fat, it's going to measure your muscle mass, it's going to measure your bone density, and it's going to tell you much more about your health than this body mass index metric will. You could be normal weight on the BMI scale, and you could have a good amount of body fat and just very very little muscle mass, and therefore show up as normal weight, which would be not a good thing, right?
No, it's
So
skinny fat.
skinny fat, exactly. So what these body composition scans are going to tell you is more about the body fat itself, what type of body fat it is. Is it subcutaneous, which is a little less risky to your health than some of the visceral fat or the fat that lives around your organs? Um, so these are pretty neat. And there's a few different ways you can do them. The gold standard from a sort of a science and health and what your doctor would typically probably tell you is the gold standard would be an MRI, but that's going to cost you a fortune, right? So the two that are more frequently used now for just general measurement are DEXA scans, and those are going to run you somewhere in the ballpark of $100. If you Google it, you can probably find a place in your area that does them. And then even lower cost would be bioelectric impedance analysis. And that would be like your in-body scan, which you may have heard of. And those are even more inexpensive. I think they even have them in like many gyms now, in Orange Theory Fitness, for example.
Mhm.
And they're
Yeah,
not.
yeah, one of the gyms that I train at has an in-body scan, and uh it's something that I recommend to not all my clients, but a lot of them. If you're somebody that does have just issues with the numbers, if that really gives you anxiety, what your weight actually is, um, you know, that's not the first place that I would start. I want to get somebody, on a consistent exercise program, get them more concerned about how they're feeling and not so much with those numbers. But as far as just having data goes, an in-body scan is really, really nice. They're not the in-body scan being the cheapest of those three options is not the most accurate, but it gives you a pretty good ballpark. And it's one of those things that if you have that baseline, as you continue to exercise, it gives you numbers to refer back to. So, are those? It's like any scale. Is it going to be perfect? Probably not, but it at least gives you a reference point so that when you go back, and I recommend for the majority of clients that about a scan every quarter or 6 months is a really good spot to check in and just see the progress that you're making.
So not super useful as a singular data point, but multiple data points and monitoring the trend of those. Much more
Mhm.
useful
Well,
way
and
to leverage a tool like that.
the thing that's really nice about these scans is it shows you what that weight is made up of, because in our heads, we have become so obsessed with that number of what that number means, how much we weigh. But when you look at it and you get to see, this much of it is water, this much of it is bone and muscle, and then this much of it is fat, it becomes so much easier to just wrap your head around, why that number is the way it is. And then it also is really, really helpful, if you are starting a strength training program and then you go back and check it, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months later, and you might not be seeing a whole bunch of shift yet as far as the weight, the number is concerned, that scale number is concerned. But then when you have these scans, it really does allow you to see, oh shit, I've actually, I've only lost 2 pounds, but I've lost 5 pounds of fat and gained 3 pounds of muscle. So so that's just, it just gives you a little bit more information as far as the changes that your body's making. And I think it's just a really great way. It's certainly a lot more effective of a way for people to be tracking weight than BMI.
And
So yeah,
even
I think that I'm in full support of this article.
and even medical doctors, right? Like the last time I went to the doctor, the time before that, I had been trying to put on some weight. So I was eating a bunch and I was doing a lot of strength training and I was in good shape, but I was strong and I'd gotten up to about 190 pounds. I went back a year later and he complimented me on having lost weight. And I thought to myself, this is crazy. Like what? That my weight was not a risk factor in that situation. And uh, I think it's probably safe to say that overweightness on its own isn't a risk factor for disease, but carrying too much body fat is. So that's ultimately what we want to know. And additionally, we know how important muscle mass is. It's a critical predictor of longevity. So to have the ability to assess both of those things from a medical point of view seems like it would be a really important thing to know. And this article is suggesting that we may be trending that way, which I think is good.
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, if this is something that people are interested in, I mean, yeah, if you are a member of a gym, if nowadays maybe you have an in body there. Otherwise, like Dylan said, if you just Google DEXA scan, I'm sure you can find one in your area that isn't going to be too crazy expensive. All right, let's transition to the main topic. So, what we wanted to talk about today was gut health. And Dylan, I mean, as well as anybody, there is so much snake oil and misinformation about there when it comes to a healthy gut. And, the fact of the matter is that everyone, no matter who you are or how healthy you are, at some point, you've had what we call gut problems. So this is something that is a really easy target for influencers, for snake oil salesmen, for these supplement companies to come in and tell you all the shit that's wrong with you and what they can sell you to fix it. And we are here to talk a little bit more about what you can actually do that is not going to cost you an arm and a leg.
Yeah, I mean, whether it was one morning of bad diarrhea, and we only made
There
it
we go.
14
Mark it,
minutes this
folks. 14 minutes.
time. Or, rush into the bathroom every time you eat, which was my situation for quite a while. Um, Everybody's had an experience with this. So it's become such a buzzword and hot topic in the wellness space. And as a result, every influencer and their mom has a remedy for it. And some of them work, some of them are absurd. And really, what I've learned through significant research and trial and error on my own and in talking to other people that have had similar problems is that the way you really wrap your arms around this, for the most part, is relatively simple. There are certainly outliers where the condition is severe enough that it requires some additional intervention. But at the end of the day, most of it boils down to shitty behaviors, whether it's shitty diet, shitty sleep, not enough exercise, a lot of the things we talk about, all of this ultimately does impact the gut. And I'm sure there's plenty of listeners on this podcast right now that have gone to the doctor and said, I have stomach problems, and they've diagnosed them with IBS as a catch-all for the problem that they have. And a year later, nothing was better. So they went back to the doctor again and couldn't get to the root of it. And there's been some evolution in gut health around things like SIBO and SIFO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. I think probably like 5 out of 10 doctors still aren't totally certain if that's a real condition. That being said, there's some evidence to suggest that it is. I was treated for it and it helped me quite a bit, but it's a pretty strict, rigorous protocol that's not going to be super simple for most people to follow. Parasites are a real thing, especially if you're like a sushi eater. Those can be treated pretty quickly with antibiotics. And you could certainly have, food intolerances, allergies, etc., that exist. But we're not going to get too much into all of that on this podcast. What we want to talk about is the habits. What are the habits that you currently have that you might need to curtail or fix to improve your gut health? Or what new habits can you implement to improve it?
Yeah. I mean, it's basically shitty diets, shitty habits, like those are going to lead to gut issues. And so the number one thing that you can do, besides you know, uh, you don't need to go on a cleanse. You don't need to, detox all of the heavy metals out of your body. At least not to start. That's not to say that these things aren't real and can't have a major impact on your health, because they certainly can. And if you are somebody that has tried a lot of these interventions that we're about to talk about, then go ahead, and you're going to need some more help to figure out what's exactly going on with you. But on the whole, the majority of people, if they just start by drinking less alcohol, eating less sugar, and eating less heavily processed foods, it's going to have way bigger impacts than any sort of cleanse possibly could.
Yeah, I think just the way that our diet is in our culture now just lends itself to shitty gut health, right? So much of it is processed. Drinking is such an important part of our culture. And I'm not here to bash drinking. I love a cold beer, and tying one on every once in a while. But to suggest that consuming alcohol regularly and having good gut health are congruent with one another is not true. If you're having gut problems and you're a regular consumer of alcohol and you're trying to fix that problem and you haven't tried cutting out alcohol for a month or more, you haven't really given all you can to trying to solve that problem. Or the problem itself isn't as bad in your mind as getting rid of alcohol altogether. So it does require some sacrifice and it's not always easy. But I think to your point, Matt, like there are all these other things out there that seem like silver bullets. If we're going to talk about maybe 7 or 8 things here, these are the first 7 or 8 things you should try before you look to any of those things.
Hmm.
And you're right. The first thing is, how much alcohol am I consuming? How much sugar, added sugar, especially. Now, I'm not talking fruits and vegetables, but added sugars are in my diet. And how often is what I'm eating coming out of a package or the freezer aisle?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And like you said, we're not here to bash any of those things. We did a whole episode on our favorite fast food items. And if you've ever hung out with us, you know how much we like to have a drink. It's one of those things that, and so it's not to say that these things need to be eliminated entirely, but if you are suffering from gut issues, then it's definitely worth at least taking a break from these things, just to see what kind of impacts it has, and then you can start to slowly integrate them back in, and you can just find that natural balance where we all want to lie.
The next one is just to drink more water, like 8-ounce glasses, roughly 64 ounces a day. Water, we've talked about tons of the different benefits of water, but one of the most important ones is that it's critical for digestion and for nutrient absorption. So if you're not getting enough water, if you're dehydrated, you're not giving your body what it needs to digest its food adequately. So it sounds simple, but I think it's really easy for people to go days at a time with not drinking anywhere close to that much water. So if you fall in that camp and you're having some gut problems, you can fill it up for free from your sink, but just make sure you're getting more water on a daily basis.
Yeah, I mean, find a water bottle that you can bring everywhere you go. Figure how much is in there, and just figure out how many times you need to fill it up throughout the day to get your recommended water intake. I know that I need to drink at least 3 of my Yetis every day in before I go to bed. And usually I end up having 4 because I know that being dehydrated in America in 2024 is one of the silliest things that you could possibly do for your health. The majority of us, if not everybody who listens to this podcast, has access to clean, healthy drinking water. So we should be taking advantage of that and because it just does so many good things for our health, but especially for our gut. It
Mhm.
helps with digestion, it helps with nutrient absorption. Now, I had heard um, back in the day, I had been told that you shouldn't drink water when you're eating food because it would end up having an issue, with digestion and how your body was able to absorb the nutrients. I went back and did some research on that, and it seems like that is total BS. And in fact, drinking a little bit of water before and after me, or before, during, and after meals is actually just going to help speed up digestion. It's going to help with nutrient absorption. So yeah, there's really no excuses here. Drink your water.
Preach.
Yeah.
Next one on the list is about fiber, which we've talked about before, and it's really critically important for gut health. So, eating a variety of fiber is going to give you the prebiotics in your gut that are required for good gut health. And we'll talk about why prebiotics are important on the next point. But there's really 3 different types of fiber: soluble fiber, insoluble fiber, and then the resistant starches that we've talked about on previous podcasts. Soluble fiber is going to attract water and turn it into gel during digestion, which will help slow your digestion down. And you can find soluble fiber in things like oats, barley, nuts, seeds, beans, lentils, peas, and a variety of different fruits and vegetables. Um, Insoluble fiber is going to be found in foods like wheat bran, a bunch of different vegetables, whole grains, and that's going to add bulk to your stool and actually help it pass a bit more quickly through the stomach and the intestines. So we want to slow down digestion and then help it move more fluidly through the stomach and intestines. So those 2 different types of fiber are critically important for gut health, and I think so many people are not getting anywhere near enough fiber in their diet. So another place to look, what am I eating and am I getting enough fiber on a daily basis, is a really good place to start.
Yeah. I I used to get really caught up with this, where it was trying to make sure that I was getting some beans for the soluble fiber, and then I was going to get a little bit of this for the insoluble fiber, and a little of this and a little of that. And then I just felt like I like the diet was this really crazy hack, that I had to figure out, like this puzzle. And what I have learned is that really, if you just eat a variety of fruits and vegetables every single day, you're going to, check most of these boxes. So, it's not about necessarily, just eating a little bit of, oh, I got to make sure that I get my lentils in today, whatever. But it's just finding these wide variety of foods that you have in your house that are already easily available for you, that you can just turn to when you're ready to make breakfast, lunch, or dinner. So I just think going to the grocery store and experimenting a little bit, trying some stuff that you've never tried before, and seeing how that might impact your health is such a great way to spice things up, and it's just going to keep cooking at home a little bit more exciting.
Yeah, according to Harvard Health, the average American gets about 10 to 15 grams per day. Most nutrition experts suggest that we should be getting closer to 30 grams per 2,000 calories consumed. So the average American is getting a third to half of what they should probably be getting. So if it's difficult for you to get, there's some supplement options you can leverage. Something like a psyllium husk can be added to a smoothie. It's pretty tasteless. Really good source of fiber. We've talked on previous podcasts about all sorts of different examples, things like the all brand buds, um, oats, you name it. There's a myriad of different places you can go for this stuff, but something to be cognizant of. And you're right, you don't necessarily need to track it, but just start to pay attention to it and think to yourself, am I getting more than I was before, especially if gut health is a concern.
For sure. The next one going, in a similar vein is making sure that you're eating a variety of fermented foods, or taking a probiotic. Now, I would start with the fermented foods. One, they're delicious. But two, probiotics are supplements. And, with any time that you're purchasing a supplement, this is a pretty unregulated industry, so you are really at the mercy of marketing and and you really got to do your due diligence to find a high quality product, and a lot of times those really high quality products come with a high price tag. And instead of finding the fanciest probiotic on the market, get yourself some sauerkraut, get some kimchi. There's plenty of delicious fermented foods out there. Now, I think something that's really important is when you are buying sauerkraut at the grocery store, you need to make sure that it's actually fermented cabbage and not just vinegar added, because that is something that is not always the case. So, a good rule of thumb is if you see it in the refrigerated section, a lot of times, that is a good indication that it's just that, fermented product. But look at the label, make sure that it's not that doesn't have vinegar added to it, because that's going to mean, it's like with sourdough bread. Like if you go to your normal grocery store and you just pull a loaf of bagged sourdough off, odds are the reason why it's sour isn't because of the fermentation process, which is what is producing all of these good probiotic bacterias. Um, it's because they added vinegar to it. So just a quick disclaimer there, as someone who obviously has fermented foods near and dear to my heart.
And so the fiber and the fermented foods slash probiotics, they work together. So fermented foods, probiotics, they're going to cultivate healthy bacteria in your gut. And the food for those healthy bacteria to help them thrive is fiber or prebiotics. And when the bacteria eat the prebiotics, they produce something called a short chain fatty acid. And short chain fatty acids are incredibly important for gut health. If you've been down the gut health rabbit hole, you've probably come across somebody suggesting that you have leaky gut syndrome, um, which is it's a weird topic to dive into. What we do know is that the intestinal barrier, the integrity of that intestinal barrier is important for gut health, and short chain fatty acids do maintain intestinal barrier integrity. So if that's something you've stumbled upon, get your fiber, eat your fermented foods. Don't, go crazy on the thing that maybe the influencer who's globbed onto that hot topic may be recommending. The science tells us these short chain fatty acids are going to do that for you. But also mucus production, protection against inflammation, even risk of colorectal cancer. So these short chain fatty acids are pretty damn cool, and they're really, really good for gut health.
Yeah, they're what the stuff in your colon eats. It's where it gets your colon basically gets its energy centers from. So if you want a healthy working colon, which I suggest, I would assume you do, yeah, those short chain fatty acids are super important. The next one that I love is getting your body into a parasympathetic state before you eat. So, you have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest. There's the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight or flight, and then you have parasympathetic, which is rest and digest. So, how you start to activate that parasympathetic nervous system is by taking deep breaths and making your exhale longer than your inhale. So, something like box breathing is, a good breathing technique to help uh, with the parasympathetic nervous system. This is something that's good to do before sleep as well, obviously, rest and digest. But even just taking a couple slow, deep breaths before every meal, uh, chewing longer, taking more bites. I read somewhere was like for every bite of food, you should, say the alphabet before you swallow. Um, and whether you're going to take that much time or not is up to you, but I think the better point is just being more intentional with your meals, slowing down and making it something that is a restful experience and not just this shoveling food into our mouths, which seems to be the American tendency nowadays.
Yeah, for every supplement I took, for every strategy I tried, for every influencer gimmick I bought into, this was by far the most transformational in helping me fix my gut health. Because I was the person that would eat on the way to work in the car, thinking about my stressful work day. I'd go grab my lunch out of the fridge, eat it at my desk while I was responding to stressful emails. And then I'd get home and I'd mindlessly eat my food on the couch while I watched a thriller drama on Netflix. So I was never giving my body the opportunity to chill the fuck out and get into a state where it could actually adequately digest the food itself. I was also very rushed, so I still eat way too fast. I have to be conscious of this, but I wasn't chewing nearly enough. And chewing is incredibly important for digestion, to your point. And really, just to slow it all down, make eating a thing that you do. Don't make it something that you do while you're doing something else. That was really critically important to helping me wrap my arms around my own gut health.
Yeah, and there's so many more ancillary benefits that go into this, just being intentional and grateful for the food that we eat. And, we don't need to get into those other benefits today, but the topic of gut health is enough. It should be enough to get you to slow down and enjoy your food. And I'll tell you what, you're going to like it a lot more. And you are also probably naturally going to eat a little less too. We tend to overeat when we are doing something else when we're eating. We also tend to overeat when we are stressed out
Mhm.
when we're eating. So just by
And when we
slowing
eat too
down,
fast. Yeah.
yeah, being intentional with your meals, not only is it going to be better for your gut because your gut is in a better state to digest and receive that food, but you're probably going to also end up eating a little less, which is going to be good for for fat loss.
I'm not a religious person, but I wonder about, like, praying before a meal,
Hmm.
right? As a way to sort of give yourself a chance to chill out, take a few deep breaths before you dive into the experience of eating itself. So, if you're not a prayerful person or super religious, there's other strategies you could think about. Maybe just saying out loud two or three things you're grateful for, maybe looking across the table and telling your kid that three things you're proud of them for, whatever it is, just something to pause, break up the the cooking of the meal or the grabbing of the meal to the eating of the meal to give yourself a chance to just chill.
Yeah, I love that.
The next one on the list is what comes after you're done eating. And this is another one that is super, super important. It's important for helping you digest your food. It's important for controlling blood sugar response as well. And that's to take a 5 minutes is enough, but 5 to 10 minute walk after every meal that you eat. And that can be getting outside and going for a walk. Sometimes for me, it's just making sure that I'm standing up, doing the dishes, some sort of just activity instead of going from eating straight to the couch
Yeah.
will be really helpful in the digestion process itself.
Yeah, don't just go veg out. Don't finish eating and then unbutton your pants and go just recline on the couch. Um, it is really, really helpful. It is makes such a difference for a lot of different reasons. There was even like with how it affects your blood sugar. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of benefits to it. And if for whatever reason going outside for a walk isn't doable for you, just getting up and moving around your house. I always like, if we're not gonna go for a walk as a family, my son and I like to wrestle after dinner, or we'll, go play catch or just something where just making sure that you're moving for a few minutes after meals is gonna make the digestion process so much better. But I also, this is kind of that similar thing to the last point where just being more intentional around your pre and post mealtime practices, not only is it going to help with the digestion process, but it's just going to make life better. It's just a good habit to get in. We are so freaking rushed in everything that we do. Nowadays with work being nearly 24/7 because we got email on our phones and I've gotten more spam calls in the last 48 hours than I can remember. Life is just everything's just happening. It's stressful. Things are just constantly just pinging in, trying to distract us from the things that are really important and we're really trying to prioritize. And by having these little guardrails set up for you before every meal, we sit down as a family, whether like you said, if you're religious, you have your prayer. If not, just taking a couple deep breaths, being grateful for your food afterwards, getting up and moving around. These are just good habits that are, we know are going to have benefits as far as the gut is concerned, but they're just good habits, to live a happy life. So I absolutely love that one. And it blends well into the next point, which is managing your stress. We have every reason to be stressed out nowadays. There are financial stressors, there are there are the global stressors. There's all everything, everything can stress you out, and a lot of times we don't have proper outlets. Our outlets become foods that we enjoy. It becomes, having a few drinks after work. It becomes binging a television show, and we don't actually manage the stress. We're just masking it.
Mm.
And so you need to find these healthy practices, like going for walks, whether it's after a meal or just throughout the course of your day, whether it is a meditation practice, journaling, whatever the case may be. Exercise is certainly one of my favorite ways of managing stress, but your gut is such a complex system that if you think that just by putting the right foods in there and hoping that everything's going to work out, it's just not.
Yeah, this is another one that was just massive for me with regards to getting my own gut health in order. We know from the studies that stress is equated with having lower quantities of helpful, good gut bacteria and higher quantities of the bad ones. And we know that stress can lead to a whole number of different gut related symptoms, from diarrhea again to stomach aches to you name it. And the physiology between your mind and your gut is still being studied, and it's really fascinating and very, very over my head. But there's certainly a connection there, right? Like, we call it a pit in our stomach. We call it, like, there's something really interesting to that, right? And
Trust
so
your gut.
trust your gut, right? Like that, it's really pretty interesting. But I think figuring out how to manage the stress and not getting in the cycle of being stressed about the gut health itself, which was a roller coaster that I was on for a long time. Like, I was stressed that I couldn't manage it. And so then every time I ate, I was stressed about what was going to happen afterwards. And I got in this cycle that I could not break. And it's just so important to manage that stress. Once I got my arms wrapped around that piece of all this, my gut symptoms got a million times better. It's really quite fascinating. So yeah, whatever that means for you, right? There's a million different ways to manage that stress. Some of it is about, taking action and getting some of these other things that we've discussed in order if that stress is about gut health itself. But if it's other things that are stressing you out, if it's just not taking the time to be present with the experience of eating itself and having that dining experience be stressful, whatever it is, getting this in order is super important as well.
Yeah, 100%. And the last one that we got on the list is sleep. If you are not sleeping enough, your gut is going to really, really hate you. Sleep is a really important time for our body. It is when our digestive system slows down, and that's actually, one of the reasons why eating right before bed is, a lot of times leaves people, um, not feeling their best because our digestive system slows. And so if it needs to stay sped up so that it can take care of all the food that you just shoveled in your belly before you go to bed, then you are going to have an awfully hard time getting restful sleep. But and this also goes back to our very first topic with limiting the amount of alcohol that you drink, because a lot of people, they say, oh, when I have a couple drinks, I go right to bed. Well, sure, you fall asleep, but the quality of sleep is definitely being affected. So, if you are not sleeping enough or not getting high quality sleep, it's going to really, really mess with what's going on in your gut.
Yeah, lack of quality sleep is a stress. It's probably the top chronic stress that the average American deals with. And we kind of just write it off and kind of undervalue its importance. Sleep is so critically important for a number of reasons, and the gut is just another one of them. So
Yeah,
that's a
and it's
go
also
ahead.
the like time too. And I get that people work all different kinds of crazy schedules, but if you are, one of the majority of people that does, have a relatively conventional schedule, getting to bed earlier is going to benefit your body. Your body craves rhythm. So that means going to sleep as the sun goes down, waking up as the sun comes up. And so, by staying up late and, just watching an excess of television and scrolling on your phones and working or whatever, whatever it is, that takes a toll on your body. So even if you are getting 6, 7, 8, 9 hours, whatever your body requires, but maybe you're not going to bed until midnight, 1 o'clock, that could also have an impact.
If you're getting 4 hours of sleep a night, you're eating like shit and you're not working out at all, the most important thing you could do to improve your health would be to sleep more, would
Right.
be to get to that 6 to 9 or whatever your body requires before you even address the diet and the exercise. That's how important sleep is.
Well, and you know what? Those other things will naturally start to fall into place if you're sleeping more.
Yeah.
Science has shown that people that get more high quality sleep make better choices when they're awake. They eat healthier foods and they're more likely to have a regular exercise routine. So yeah, I mean you're exactly right, but I guarantee if you start getting those, that right amount of sleep, those other things are going to start to just take care of themselves.
Yeah. Lack of sleep is correlated with increased cravings. Lack of sleep is associated with decreased muscle mass and inability to build muscle. So yeah, I mean, sleep maybe should have been at the top of the list. It's that important.
Yeah.
So anything else? Otherwise, I'm going to do a quick basics recap on all of this.
No, man, go for it.
All right, so you got some gut problems, you go to the doctor, and your doctor takes you through some tests and assessments, and setting aside any of the more severe issues, the doctor tells you you've got IBS, which is, in my experience, the most frustrating diagnosis a human being could ever receive. And so you go home and you're looking for ways to address this because it's not a very empowering diagnosis. There's not like a whole lot that they're going to tell you to do to resolve that. Probably tell you to do some sort of restrictive diet, try to figure out which foods may be causing you some problems. The things we just listed, and I'm going to list them again very quickly, in our opinion, should be the first things you do before you look anywhere else for solutions, because these are the big rocks. If you get these things right for a month, 2 months, and you're still having some gut problems, then we can start to look to some of the fringes, some of the smaller rocks. So, what are you going to do? You're going to look at how much alcohol, sugar, and heavily processed food you're eating, and you're going to try to reduce that significantly. You're going to get more fiber into your diet and a variety of fiber. So, soluble fiber, insoluble fiber, and resistant starches. You're going to try to get, 1, 2, maybe 3 servings of fermented foods, and or look to find, if you can afford it, a high quality probiotic to take daily. You're going to sit down with your meal every time you eat it. You're going to take 3 or 4 deep breaths, chill yourself out. You're going to chew your food twice as long. And you're going to try to eat a bit slower. As soon as you're done with that meal, you're going to move around for 5 minutes instead of going straight to the couch. You're going to look at your stress bucket. You're going to think about how to manage some of that a little bit better. And you're going to make sure you're getting your adequate sleep at night. And if you do those things, the majority of people will significantly improve their gut health and the gut health related symptoms that they're dealing with.
Well said, brother. Well said. All right. Let's move on to the question and answer. So, Dylan, this question comes from a in-person training client of mine. She asked, "How do you maintain muscle while in a calorie deficit?"
Yep.
So, I certainly have my ways, but I want you to start it off. What do you think?
I have a few thoughts. So I think most importantly, if maintaining muscle mass is important, which I think it should be in a cut or in a calorie deficit, it's important not to be too aggressive with the cut itself. So if you cut your calories too significantly, you will lose muscle mass. You will. It's nearly impossible not to. So working with a trainer, it sounds like they're already working with you to figure out, maybe 200 calorie cut instead of 400 or 500 calorie cut will help you to maintain that muscle mass. It may take you a little bit longer to lose the weight, but maintaining that muscle mass is critically important. So that's one thought that I have. Another of which is just to keep training hard. So just because you've gone into a calorie deficit or you've maybe you're not traditionally focused on muscle building as it's related to sort of your diet and nutrition, you should still train like you are. You should go in there with an ambition to progressively overload weight, and you may have some weaker days as a result of some of that calorie restriction, but your mindset in the gym should remain muscle building. So muscle maintenance, get rid of that altogether. You're still going to the gym to build muscle.
Yep.
I think those are probably the two most important strategies in my mind. Curious what else you think should go in there, Matt.
Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, the way that I think about it is just making sure that they're playing the long game.
Mhm,
Which is what was your first point. By any online trainer can say, "I'm going to help you lose 10 pounds in 14 days, and and I've got the system for you." But it's not sustainable. So, I think step one is remembering that we're playing the long game here. So yeah, we just need to be in a calorie deficit consistently. It
mhm,
doesn't need to be anything crazy drastic. So I love that first point that you make. The second point is also incredible. You need to go to the gym not like somebody that is in a calorie deficit. And a lot of people, when they are in this, like this fat burning phase, the first thing that they turn to is cardio. And we've already done, we did a whole podcast on why that's not the best strategy for losing fat. But the big thing is, if you want to maintain and even build muscle when you're in a deficit, you need to keep training like you're trying to build muscle. But then the last thing would be, even though you're in a calorie deficit, or especially because you're in a calorie deficit, prioritizing protein
Mm,
becomes even more important. The recommendations that we've given out on this podcast that a lot of people seem to stick by is that zero point 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per pound of your ideal body weight. So if you want to be 150 pounds, you should be whatever, zero point 0.7 of 150 is, up to that 150 grams of protein every single day. And that doesn't mean that you're going to hit that number all the time, but you want to make sure that you're doing that more often than not. And if you are overweight, or if you are older, if you are over 45, then you should definitely be striving for that 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight, or even higher, because the older you get, the harder it becomes to maintain muscle and to build new muscle. And the only way that you're going to do it is by having an excess of protein. So I think if you do those three things, you're going to be just fine.
yeah, one other diet related tip. If you're in a calorie deficit, you're eating less food, you're probably eating less fats and carbs, and you should certainly be prioritizing the protein. One strategy to make those workouts as effective as possible is to organize the carbohydrate intake right before, 60 to 90 minutes before that workout, so that you go into that workout with glycogen stores, with energy to have the most effective workout possible. You'll see a lot of people go into a cut, they save their carbs for late in the day, and they're working out midday, and they're just drained of energy. And so they show up with this muscle building mindset, but they just don't have the energy stores in place to give to that exercise. So that can be a useful strategy as well.
It's a great fucking point, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into the plug portion of the show. I hate it, but if you all just subscribed and then grabbed your parents' phones the next time that you saw them and had them subscribe, and sent it to all of your old college friends and asked them to subscribe, then I wouldn't have to ask so damn much. So please, 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 we love making this podcast and we want to keep doing it. So we need to get the word out there. Share the podcast with your friends. Subscribe to it on Spotify. Go to the Basic Trainer YouTube channel and give us a follow there. If you like the information and want to see more about what we do, head over to thebasictrainer.com. We've got a 100% free at home workout, Basic Home, a 12-week strength training program that just requires resistance bands. Or if you're ready to hit the gym, we have Basic Muscle, our flagship strength training program. So we also have some merch over there. Dylan, are you rocking? Is that a basic trainer tee right now? Basic Trainer T, I Lift to Sad Songs, Tank. We've got all kinds of good stuff, and we're going to keep getting more in there. So we love what we do, and we want to keep doing it. So please, please support. Now, the best podcast topic perhaps ever invented. It is the I Lift to Sad Songs sad song of the week. It is my sad song, Dylan, which means you're going to have to put up with some Miley. We are
What?
going to get, yeah. You know that I am a big Miley Cyrus fan, and my absolute jam in the gym lately has been "Angels Like You." It is a beautiful song, and I not only should you check out that version when you're lifting, but also go over to YouTube, and There's a version, she was rehearsing it, she performed it, like, before the Super Bowl a few years ago, and there's a version of her, uh, practicing it live that is absolutely incredible. It will knock your socks off. So,
Miley
Dylan, that's for you, but
Miley's
everybody at home should check it out too.
Miley's pipes are insane.
They're insane, and,
Yeah.
this song just goes on to prove it. So, thank you, everybody. We love you all so much, and we'll see you next time.